Hey everyone, Glenn here from Monster Guitars. The Monster Guitars workshop is about to relocate. Well, I'm moving house. And one of the things that I have to do is tidy up my workshop. Fortunately, there's a nice, decent sized garage and workshop where I'm going, which is fantastic. So that'll be the new Monster Guitars workshop. And I've got a lot of this stuff. Little scrap pieces of wood. Well, no, I take it back. Not scrap pieces of wood, little pieces of wood. The question is, are they scrap or are they not? You see, we live in an age where more than ever sustainability and not wasting stuff is important. And that's good because, well, there's only a finite number of trees at any given time. Some of these are native trees. We don't want to go chopping them down willy-nilly if we can help it. So I do use a lot of recycled wood when I can. Most of the time, actually. Most of the wood I use now is recycled. So yay me. But I want to figure out if this wood is really scrap. I'm pretty sure that it's not. See what I mean? Now here's a headstock. I like the headstock. It's one that it's based on the Fender style headstock, but I changed it and made it my own shape. Most of these pieces of wood, well, they're actually half the length that they were. I've cut them in half. Planning what I'm going to do, but they're all as long, at least as long as this headstock. So that tells me all by itself that there's at least something that I could do with these pieces of wood. So I've started cutting them and thicknessing them and putting them side by side, and what I'm going to do is make a nice laminated board. I'll make it symmetrical because otherwise, well, I don't have to, I suppose, but I like things to be symmetrical. I'll make the arrangement of color symmetrical and see what we get as a result. I'm pretty sure we could end up with a board that would make a pretty decent back-angled headstock that you attach to the neck via a scarf joint. Let's see what I can come up with. Some of these pieces are just a bit thin. I tried cleaning out the sawdust so that I could close the thicknesser a little bit more and thickness even the skinniest bits, but that's at the point where it's probably not usable because I can't get that nice and thicknessed. And there was another one in that category too, or maybe there wasn't. Maybe that's just the thinnest one. But okay, I've got lots of usable pieces now. These ones and a couple of others back at my workbench. So now I need to arrange them in such a way so that the board that I create is at least 15 millimeters thick, and that the area, well, that it will fit the headstock template onto it, allowing for a scarf joint. And as you can see, there's going to be easily enough wood there for the length. So I will move the template as far as possible that way. In fact, I'll swap some pieces around just to enable me to maybe move it even further, just to allow plenty of room for the scarf joint, because that will take up a fair bit of length there with a 14-degree angle cut into the wood. Well, I'm gluing all those strips together. I've got to, actually I did one small chunk, and now I'm gluing a second chunk to it, and I've got another chunk over here. One thing I maybe should have done initially is thickness them all that way as well, so that this piece is all consistently roughly the same height. That made things slightly more difficult. So before I glue these two pieces together, I will run them both through the thicknesser. Having them the same thickness, of course, just makes it easier to clamp them down in every way. Right, next stop, the thicknesser. And there are both pieces. There's the glue join glued up there. I'll leave them overnight and come back to that and see what we've got. There's the whole piece having gone through the thicknesser, and it looks great. The only thing is, having put it through the thicknesser enough times to make it all nice and flat on both sides, it's now a little bit less than 15 millimeters. It's about 12 millimeters, which is too thin for a headstock. But I still want to use it for a headstock, so I have this, well, actually I'll just cut this piece of wood in half. There's the other half over there. That was the full length of the piece of wood, so quite small, not usable for many things, but usable for a headstock. And I might do this again, actually. The next time I've got enough scraps to do this, I will attach them to the piece of tower, because now I have another piece of tower or two. I could split that again. So each time I have scraps, I'll do this. Well, small scraps anyway. So I'll glue that together. Then it'll be far too thick. Then I can thickness the back down until it's about 15 millimeters, and I've got myself a headstock. And of course it's not ideal that I thicknessed those pieces too thin from an eco point of view, because it means I had to use another piece of wood, which is a small enough piece of wood that someone might have thrown in the way anyway, but still the point of this was to use as little as possible, and now I'm having to use glue. But what was I going to do? Throw them away? Okay. That's pretty well pressed on now. Of course, I'm just using this piece of tower to press the layers together and distribute the pressure evenly. Let's leave that until it's dry. I cut out the whole piece, so basically I cut out the backing piece to the shape of the laminated top piece made up of all those strips, and then I used a flush trimmer out a bit to make sure that it was really trim, really flush along the edges with it, with the top piece. And I put it through the thicknesser a few times, and now it's 17 millimeters thick, bearing in mind that the headstock will be 15 millimeters thick, so it's pretty close now. I won't thin that anymore just now. No, I won't. Okay, so this is going to be back angled on a neck. So just imagine that the top of this bench is the neck. This is going to be like that. So you can see I'm going to have to cut that top corner off at the same angle as my back angled headstock will be. Now, I think earlier in this series of videos I erroneously used a figure of 14 degrees to describe the angle of the scarf joint on my headstock. It's not, it's 15 degrees, a whole 1 degree different, but it is 15 degrees-ish. It might be 14 degrees, maybe I'm just not very precise. So that's what I'll do next. I'll cut that corner off. Now you can tell that this isn't working perfectly. Something is not straight up and down. It could be the blade, or it could be that the table isn't level, or it could be that the piece of wood I've cut for the jig isn't level, because that is, well, that should be a straight up and down edge, but it's not. But that's no matter. I can fix that with the belt sander, which I'll do now. So now the scarf, now the angle is about right. It goes pretty much straight across, although when I put it onto the neck, I am going to have that part slightly raised, and then I'll sand it back to the surface of the neck. It's better to err on that side than try to risk gluing it on dead even and then having it slide down a little bit. That seems like the right thing to do, doesn't it? Okay, so I've just drawn the outline of the headstock now, and I'll cut that out. So when you take shortcuts and try to remove too much wood with your sander because it's easy, you run the risk of ruining the paper, as I have. So I'll need to replace that, which I don't think I have a replacement sleeve for that. Maybe I have one. I'll check. I used the short-term solution of just turning the sleeve upside down so the worst of the damage is at the top. I say worst of the damage because the reality is the whole sleeve is pretty old and in bad condition. So I need to replace that, and I shall. But this is done for now. Obviously, there are further things that will need to be done. I'll do that when I make the neck. Maybe I'll go all the way when I do this and make the neck as well out of scraps of wood. I mean, what's this? This is a piece of wood that's by itself too narrow to make a neck, but I could certainly combine it with other pieces of wood. You know, you just have to think like that. Narrow pieces of wood that you might throw away. Before you do, just think, you know, what in theory could this become part of? You know, some of these trees, they're forested sustainably, but there's a reason that they have to be forested sustainably, and that's that they're at risk. There aren't too many of them, and look, just make stuff go further. I guess the lesson here is waste not, want not. And with that small piece out of the way, I continue in earnest to clean up and pack up the workshop. I nearly said get a good look around because this is the last you'll see of the Monster Guitars workshop as you know it. That's not quite true. I've got another project that I have now completed. You haven't seen that yet, but that's coming up next. And for the project after that, I'm about halfway through it. So you'll see half of that in this workshop, and then we'll jump to the new workshop. But for me personally, anyway, it's the end of the line for this place and on to better things.